0 to 60 can define a performance car, but it's the fastest 60 to 0 that's the aim of Tarox brakes. From road cars to race cars, circuits, special stages, or the autostrada, nothing reduces speed like Tarox brakes. Italy gave the world the art of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Tarox has given drivers the art of stopping. For more information and to acquire your own masterpiece, visit tarox.co.uk. Yes, it's me, Mark Stone, and this is the Backseat Driver Podcast. It's the fastest, it's the friendliest, and it's for all the family. The Gas Shocks 116 Trophy and 120 Coupe Cup are the fastest growing race series in the UK, taking in 6 one-hour races and 8 sprints at all the top circuits. Visit 116trophy.com to find out more and get yourself behind the wheel. From a pot of tea to TT motorbikes. From a classic English breakfast to a full serving of classic cars. Bridge House Tea Rooms is the Northwest premier classic car meeting location for cars, bikes, tractors and owners clubs. So no matter what your automotive appetite might be, visit Bridge House Farm Tea Rooms on their Facebook page or call John and Alicia on 07980 444 221 for show details and to reserve your own table and parking space. I'd like to introduce the Backseat Driver Radio Show a motor racing enthusiast, motorsport journalist, author, and the man who made the Kodak Instamatic famous. Stuart Dent. He's just published Both Sides of the Barrier, Images and Memories from a Motor Racing Odyssey, the A-side, 1957 to 79. Stuart, welcome to the Backseat Driver Radio Show.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. It's good to be here.
Right, how did all this come about?
Well, I've been putting my photographs up on social media over the course of the last, 15, 18 years or so, I suppose. And in the autumn of 2023, some guys that I'd got to know through their prior publishing exploits, the chaps who formed BHP, they approached me with the idea of putting my photographs into a book format.
Yeah.
So it was their idea. They take full credit for that. And, represented quite an exciting challenge for me.
Now, when you read the book, the one thing you realise is, especially this year, as I said, the A-side, which means there is a part 2 looming large somewhere along the lines, 57 and into the 60s, motor racing was what I call, it was the proper era of motorsport. And it's roughly about when I was knocking about. It also was the era when, with a bit of guile and a bit of savvy, you could get yourself into the paddocks and into the circuits and meet the drivers. I mean, I conclude, having read the book, this is what you did a lot, isn't it? You worked out the ways of getting in there.
I did, and this really was on the back of getting an unbelievable break as a 15-year-old. By the father of one of the top drivers in Formula 5000 at the time, Steve Thompson.
Yes.
His father, Sid, through a friend of my father's, basically got me an invitation to attend a race meeting with Steve Thompson's dad, Sid. Yeah. And therefore I was all of a sudden, from being a fanatic on the outside and going everywhere where I could, and paying to do so, like everyone else, all of a sudden I was on the inside.
Yeah.
And as I say, I was 15, and it was just unbelievable. And that gave me a taste, as you can imagine, of what it was like to be involved, if you like, in a very peripheral way within the inner sanctum. Yeah. And I just had to have more. And so that was my motivation, my inspiration to find as any and every possible route, as you mentioned, to repeat that process in following seasons.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is the book points out, and this is the interesting thing, is the bulk of your photography was carried out with a free Kodak Instamatic. I mean, just how did you acquire this camera?
It really was free. It was free with a huge bag or box of licorice all sorts.
Yeah.
Those, I think you can still get them, can't you? Bassett used to make the Fayos one.
Yeah.
And that was on a summer holiday in 1969.
Yeah.
So initially it was, family snaps on the beach and things like that. Then I had a little phase, I don't think I mentioned it in the book actually, of being interested in buses. So I took quite a lot of photos of buses at the end of the 60s. And then, of course, it was it came into its own, really, when I got the motor racing bug.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about those, and somewhere back at my parents', I have one, not like yours, because there's a photograph of yours in the book, but the beauty of them was they had that, shall we say, self-contained cassette that you just dropped in the back, and that was it. No prattling about, just push it in. And the only other option you had was a lens setting or an aperture setting, bright or overcast.
Absolutely. Or flash,
yeah.
Which, of course, I was hardly ever used because the flash cubes,
yeah.
And that's what they were, 4 bulbs in a rotating cube, were so expensive. And I used them once, as mentioned in the book, and the results were disastrous, so never to be used again.
Well, I mean, the other problem with those was they had an effective range of about 3 feet.
Yes, that's right. But as you mentioned, that the camera was so unbelievably basic.
Yeah.
And, you couldn't even frame a picture accurately because your viewfinder, unlike an SLR single lens reflex camera, was looking at something really just different to what the lens was looking at.
Yeah, I mean, technically that was why the Leica rangefinder were, because in the viewfinder there was a square and that's what the lens saw. In an Instamatic, you never got this. It was just a click and hope, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
But I mean, look, not being funny, looking at the end results, they were all square because these cameras generated square photographs. I mean, over this period of time, this little camera and the square format captured some unbelievable images of drivers and all sorts. I mean, it's tangible proof that you didn't need the latest gear to go and get the photographs that you acquired.
No, obviously the technical side of it, of the end result, left a lot to be desired. But what do you expect from a camera that was free with some sweets?
Yeah, and probably with a plastic lens as well, if memory serves on them.
It wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I mean, it illustrates what was possible if you had the guile to get yourself into places you should never have been.
Yeah,
and capture the moment. And in that respect, it worked perfectly.
I mean, the drivers then were completely different to drivers now. I mean, the modern driver is surrounded by a PR team, security and everything else. Back then, a driver in a car would pull up next to you, climb out, and there they would be. I mean, what were the drivers' attitudes towards you at the time, being a young lad?
In general, they were very accommodating. There were exceptions, but I think in retrospect, because I did think about these reactions that weren't so positive at the time, and I think it was a question of not picking my moment appropriately enough, and that was a lesson learned. Because being aware that these guys, if you're only 3/4 of an hour away from the start of a Grand Prix, they've got plenty to think about, and they're not going to be wanting to be bothered with signing a signature or in your book or something like that. So you learn by these things,
yeah,
and react accordingly. But no, some guys made such an impression on me. The one that stands out always is Guy Regazzoni.
Yeah.
Which I described in the book. Admittedly, it was at a Formula 5000 race. It was the final round of the 1973 championship at Brands Hatch.
Yeah.
So there wasn't the level of pressure on the drivers, or certainly on him being a Grand Prix driver, as there would have been had it been a Formula 1 event. But even so, for him to remember that prior to the race, he said, not at the moment, but come back and see me afterwards and I'll sort you out, when I'd asked him for some stickers. I saw him after the race and I thought, he's not going to remember me, but I'm going to follow up regardless.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And lo and behold, he did remember me. And we wandered off down the hill to the old, in the old paddock.
Yeah.
And went to his hire car, which was a Mark III Cortina. And he duly opened the boot, got his briefcase out and doled me out some stickers.
I mean, sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I couldn't believe it. I didn't expect him to remember me. And it was almost as if I'm going to remind him just to embarrass him.
Yeah.
I was very wrong. And he was already a hero to me because he was a BRM driver.
Yeah.
And I think we already knew he was going back to Ferrari at that juncture. So, you know, he was right up there already. But, I mean, he just put himself on such a high pedestal with his attitude towards me. As you say, you know, an absolute nobody little kid.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I mean, the other thing when you read your book is like there, Formula 5000. I mean, that was one of the formulas then. I mean, like the great Brian Redmond won numerous championships in that. It was a serious formula, was Formula 5000, wasn't it?
It really was. And of course, in that era, they were, when we still had non-championship races, there were a total of 7, I think I'm right in saying, Formula One races in Britain in 1971, which predated my attendance, but even so, an amazing statistic. And the grids for the non-championship races were bulked out by adding Formula 5000s in. Yeah, you wouldn't do that if they were completely uncompetitive. They'd have to be there or thereabouts. And of course, famously, in 1973 at the Race of Champions, the Formula 5000 won the combined event.
Yeah,
beat all the Formula One cars.
And the other thing you realise, reading this book, the number of teams that have vanished. I mean, you talk about teams that you think, I remember them, them. And that's when they used to buy a car from a manufacturer and go and race. I mean, that doesn't happen now. I mean, it must be sad if you think back now. Great at the time, but sad now to realise how many teams have vanished.
It's tragic. And I don't like getting old already. But my only real consolation is the fact, and this is what I do consciously remind myself about, if you were at the age you are, Stuart, you wouldn't have seen motor racing as its greatest. And as you say, you know, when you could literally just go to March or someone of that ilk, buy yourself a chassis, go to Cosworth or one of the tuners and buy yourself a DFV and go Grand Prix racing.
Yeah.
It was just wonderful.
Now, of course, you carried on from being a teenage enthusiast with an Instamatic. I mean, how did you progress into doing what you did?
Latterly, do you mean?
Well, you went from being an enthusiast with an Instamatic to starting to write about and cover the sport, didn't you?
Well, you're now going into the realms of the yet to be written.
All right.
B-side, because to remind you, the A-side, the already published book volume, concludes with me being offered a job on Autosport magazine.
Yeah.
Following the interview I'd had with them. And that was to work on the advertising department.
Right.
And so the B-side will be, as the name of the book implies, me going to the other side of the barrier.
Yeah.
I spent the 70s as being a fan, essentially on one side of the barrier.
Yeah.
And then it became my job, effectively. And then all of a sudden I'm officially on the other side of the barrier, as opposed to unofficially, which is what my photographs are all about.
Now, as an enthusiast and given the era of the A-side, 57 to 79, I mean, you will be, well, as I was, I'm a little bit younger than you, but you started to live through the era when, okay, I mean, there's the old saying, motorsport is dangerous and it always will be. And if you don't want injuring in a racing car, don't go and get in one. Well, I mean, you would have been witness to quite a few of the dangers because at the time the circuits were nowhere near as safe as they are now.
Well, safety was starting to become an issue thanks to the pioneering efforts of Jackie Stewart in particular.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, it was a different animal back then. The first proper race, I always describe it as, the first circuit race I ever attended was the September 1971 Formula 5000 race at Alden Park. And sadly, during that race, not in front of me, but I could see the smoke, a privateer driver in a Cooper, he didn't wear belts, he wore a jumper and over his shirt. He had an open face helmet. This a real sort of gentleman amateur at the time, and they were already fading away. Those guys. He had a mechanical failure and sadly died.
Yeah,
and that was my first race.
Yeah. So
right from the word go, you became very aware at a 14-year-old, as I was at the time, of the reality of the dangers. I'd known that these things happen because just by reading magazines, I'd already experienced racing losing luminaries such as Pedro Rodriguez and Joe Siffert in particular.
Yeah.
But then when it happens at an event you're at, it really hits you hard, especially at that age.
Yeah.
But yeah, the drivers were just a different breed back then. I didn't tangibly think this at the time, but in retrospect, I used to consider them to be gladiatorial.
Yeah.
And I do remember every Race of Champions, which was the first time you got to see Formula One cars in the flesh in Britain every year.
Yeah.
In the March, I'd look at the grid once I'd done whatever I'd managed to do photographically, and think, I wonder how many of these guys are going to be at this race next year.
Yeah.
You had to be aware of it. And the starkest example of the fragility of life as a driver back in those days was 1974, when that was the first time I managed to wheedle my way onto a Formula One grid.
Yeah.
And I got some cockpit shots, which was just, that was such an achievement for me on a personal level, including Peter Revson.
Oh, yeah.
And while my film cartridge, as you've alluded to, was still at the process, was at Kodak being processed, the poor man died.
Yeah.
Testing 5 days later in a test at Kyalami in South Africa.
Yeah.
So in between me taking his photograph and me getting the process slide back, the poor man had deceased.
Now, of course, that was the other thing you talk about, the fact that how many frames were there on I think, were they did they call them a 126? I think.
Yes, I think you're right. That rings a bell. From memory, it was 1224.
Hidden away in the heart of the Ribble Valley, Specialised Automotive Services offer unrivalled levels of talent for all types of vehicles. All makes and models, old and new, are cared for with the exact same levels of detail. From accident repairs, paintwork, or even full bespoke bare metal resprays. Mechanical rebuilds to full replacement or modifications of defunct electrical systems. Specialised Automotive Services offer traditional engineering and mechanical skills along with the company's constantly updated digital systems and diagnostics. Each SAS technician embodies the SAS ethos of ensuring everything is in order and exactly as it should be. To arrange a guided tour of the workshops and the new vehicle finishing and detailing bay, call Dean on 01282 776 081 or visit sas-autos.co.uk.
Or 36.
Yeah.
And whichever one I bought, or ones I bought sometimes, were determined by how much funds I'd managed to accrue from my paper round. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
And of course, well, not of course, but in my case, whilst my parents were great and they took me to some races, they didn't take me to all of them. So I had to make my own way there on public transport and stuff like that. So that was also out of my money, most of it.
Yeah.
From my paper rounds.
Yeah.
So, but the funniest thing, and I only discovered this whilst writing my book, was that these. Oh, this is just, I could beat myself up so badly about this. I didn't realise until a couple of years ago that they did different speed films.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So I was just buying them by the number of frames I could afford, not by what speed the film was. So in that respect, it was always, in hindsight, just a complete lottery.
Yeah.
And explains why, on some occasions, my films, if the light was particularly poor, 1975 Race of Champions springs to mind, I get next to nothing back.
Yeah.
And because I'd probably got a film suitable for a glorious sunshine.
But, if you think back then, life was a lot more innocent, really, wasn't it?
I think so. I was young at the time, so I wasn't really concerned with the greater scheme of things. But, yeah, it was simpler.
One thing, given the 57 to 79, and you allude to it in the book, you were also witness to the evolution of the cars. From 57 to 79, they would have visually changed quite dramatically, wouldn't they?
Oh, beyond belief, the evolution, the speed of the evolution, really. My awareness, I'd got early 60s Dinky and Corgi toys, so I knew about the cigar-shaped cars, and I was aware of the cars that predated them. I think my dad had a model that he gave to me of a Bugatti, front-engine Bugatti Grand Prix car. So, there was an awareness. But for me, the cars, I couldn't, in hindsight, I couldn't have actually picked a better era to have discovered my interest in the sport, because the cars looked fantastic. They sprouted wings. Commercial sponsorship was new.
Because I was going to touch on that, because all of a sudden, I think Graham Hill was the first one with gold leaf, but all of a sudden cars were mobile billboards, weren't they?
Yes, but in general they were done very subtly. There are liveries from that era, the early 70s, that are still considered now as iconic. John Player Special on the Lotus is the livery that replaced the Gold Leaf brand. That's still revered to this day, 53 years on.
Yeah.
And the Yardley livery that first adorned the BRMs and then the McLarens, that too is considered to be a classic. So they were done in a way whereby they made their mark, but in an attractive way, not like a massive dog's breakfast or the things that we see today.
The one thing I always say to people is, it's fair enough. Maybe it needed banning, maybe it didn't. I do imbibe with tobacco. But I said to people, it wasn't to get you to smoke, it was to get you to change brands.
Yes, that was the official line. I think unofficially they wanted people to take up smoking as well.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. The official line was always getting people to change brands, yeah. And of course, back then, and I'm a smoker too, by the way, Mark, and I never changed brand, even though my favourite cars were often had a Marlboro connection. She never smoked Marlboro or JPS. I've lost my train of thought now. What was I saying?
We were talking about getting you to change brands, not to take up smoking officially, but unofficially they wanted you to take up smoking.
Yes. It'll be slightly naive to believe that they didn't want that to happen. But you're quite right that the official line was exactly as you say, wanting people to change brands. Oh, the point I was going to make was there was a huge, a much greater percentage of people smoked back then compared to now. Yes, that's a significant factor.
Funny enough, I've just read an advert in an old magazine that explained why certain doctors smoked certain cigarettes. It calmed their nerves more than the other ones. But back then, with the advertising, did the atmosphere of the paddock and the pits change?
Well, I couldn't really compare it to anything because the commercial foothold had already been established by the time I got to my first Grand Prix, which was 1972.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Gold Leaf sponsorship of Lotus, which was introduced in 1968. So by the time I actually physically got to being at a Grand Prix, it was 4 years down the road.
Yeah.
And rather like the evolution in the cars, a lot had changed commercially in that space of time. So yeah, I mean, it was just such a colourful place back then, largely because of the commercial sponsorship. Because you don't have to look too far and hard to see what the cars were in terms of their presentation.
Yeah.
Prior to 1968, prior to Gold Leaf's arrival, they were essentially produced in their national racing colours, and only trade decals were allowed.
Yeah, I was going to say you get
Not Girling.
Shell, Ferodo, Girling, oil companies, and tyre companies, wouldn't you?
Yep.
I mean, at the time, once again, going back to the teams, unlike today where they require millions, if not billions, you'd have seen a lot of the teams, probably why a lot of them went by the by. They would be struggling. It would be an effort for them to make every meeting, wouldn't it?
Yes, and in many cases they didn't do every meeting for that very reason. So you'd get teams that would essentially just do the European races because they could afford to get there.
Yeah,
and not do the flyaways. It's just a different world. And of course, the flip side of that is you'd also get the one-off appearances that people, teams would just appear for their home race.
Yeah.
It was just so interesting. There was something happening all the time in every aspect. It was just so fun.
Yeah.
So entertaining.
I think the other thing is, from your description...
Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just a pertinent recollection regarding the budgets and so forth at the time. I remember reading that McLaren in 1972, sponsored by Yardley, drivers Denny Hulme and Peter Revson.
Yeah. So
2 top-line drivers, both on the payroll. Their sponsorship budget for 1972 was £250,000.
And I was talking to somebody a while ago, and they were telling me how much it cost to have their company's logo on the wing mirrors of an F1 car for a season. And that was 40 million.
Yeah. I mean, it's just insane now. It really is. I remember talking to Eddie Jordan at the end of 91, I think it was, to see what the opportunities were, if any, of getting his former Formula 3 driver, my best mate, Tommy Byrne, in a role as test driver. And long story short, it was £1 million, possibly dollars, and for one logo on the inside of the rear wing.
Just a quick aside, somebody approached a friend of mine who is a racing driver and said he wanted to drive a Bentley Continental in the GT series, but he just wanted to drive one race. So my friend got back to him and said, it's sorted, it'll cost you £60,000. Oh, he said, I only want to do one race, I don't want a season to be told that is to do one race.
It's just crazy, isn't it? Really is.
I mean, talking of that, you would have seen the money start to roll in, wouldn't you? And I dare say a lot of people have said it had a good effect and it had a bad effect.
Yes, there's two sides to everything, aren't there, Mark? I think at the end of the day, it has to be considered beneficial, even though the advent of commercial sponsorship upset a lot of the diehards at the time. You know, it allowed the sport to flourish to an incredible level at a very rapid rate. And another person whose influence can't be underestimated is Bernie Ecclestone.
Yeah.
Because he saw what was happening. He was a team owner from, 1972 onwards with Brabham, and he got it by the scruff of the neck, banged a few heads together and started to steer the ship.
Yeah.
And, he's not a unilaterally popular person, and I can understand some of the reasons behind that, but overall, that guy worked wonders for the sport. He really did.
Yeah. And, I mean, you would have also had the opportunity to see new drivers appear that went on to great things. Were you, as a, shall we say, a spotty youth in the pits and the paddocks, able to spot any of them and think that guy will go on to great things?
Well, I can't say that I was. I mean, it by complete chance and not by judging on sensible criteria. I adopted, in that sense, Niki Lauda after the first time I'd seen him race when he won at Oulton Park in a Formula 2 event. It was a British Formula 2 Championship series.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. It was the European guys doing 5 rounds in Britain. Again, an example of something you just wouldn't see nowadays. Anyway, it was his helmet that appealed to me. It's enormously bright day-glow helmet. I thought it was fantastic. It was unlike any of the other helmets. And he, to me, didn't look really what a racing driver should look like. So he had a great helmet and he didn't really look like a racing driver. And I thought, he's my bloke. I like it. He won the race. Then he won the race. And that was it. A huge Lauda fan from that moment onwards. And of course, he went on to great things. But I can't honestly say that I talent spotted it.
Yeah.
As such.
I mean, the great stories about Lauda were, to go and do the races, he put his car on a trailer, hook it to the back of his road car, and off he would go. Once again, you would have seen the advent of the big transporters as compared to a lot of them. It's like I said, it was a racing car on a trailer on the back of a car, and the transporters would have come into being.
Yep, that was very much still happening with the private entrance that we spoke about earlier. In my early days, I took a photograph. It's in the book. I think I'm right in saying in the paddock at Silverstone for the 1973 British Grand Prix, where John Watson was making his Grand Prix debut.
Yeah,
he'd had a couple of outings at non-championship races, one of which sadly broke his leg. But this was his comeback event. He was in a second-hand, year-old Brabham, entered by a North London garage, and it arrived on the back of a trailer. They had a Transit or a Bedford van with an awning, and they were sandwiched in between the Works Brabham and Graham Hill's Embassy Shadow team.
Yeah.
It was just, you couldn't make it up. And I was so glad I took a photograph of that, because it did start to dwindle after that, or around about then. So, that just epitomises what it was like for the privateer. But the cars used to turn up, and Grand Prix cars used to turn up on the back of trailers, exactly as you described.
Now, the one thing is, going back to the book, there's a lot of photographs in it. There's a lot of photographs on the front cover. How big is your archive of these?
Well, needless to say, there's an awful lot more didn't make the book than did.
Yeah.
For various different reasons, not least of which was, quality.
Yeah.
But I don't think Darren and Kevin, who formed BHP, I don't think they were expecting me to actually come out with as much waffle as I did. So that had an effect on the amount of photographs that made it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How have these little photographs, have they survived all right? Because, not being funny, the images from those little Kodak cameras were never meant for any longevity, were they? It was mainly due to the processing process and the paper they were printed on. They weren't designed to last.
No, all mine, apart from the British Grand Prix 1972 onwards, I took slide film. Yeah. So they're all slides as opposed to prints from there on. And if I wasn't just a natural hoarder of everything, the book wouldn't have happened, because so much of my stuff would have just been lost over the years.
Yeah.
And also, because of my hoarder instincts, some of the films, I mentioned the 1975 Race of Champions, when clearly I had a film for a sunny day and it was pitch black. The results from that film, honestly, I was probably, even at the time, tempted just to bin the whole lot.
Yeah.
They were so disappointing. But thanks to current modern technology and the fact I didn't throw them away, I managed to resurrect some of them.
Yeah.
So, and also, you mentioned the fact that the images were all square, and you're right, they were. Two things, really. Firstly, in the book, you'll see that not all of them are reproduced as square.
Yeah.
Well, that's a simple artistic license being used in terms of cropping them.
Yeah.
For various different reasons, space, but also some of the images, there's just so much background that's not relevant or interesting.
Yeah.
They're cropped into suit. But the other thing that I discovered in the process of putting the book together and fettling my images was the fact that on some of them, I just through frustration and being inquisitive, they're all in cardboard mounts, or all the Kodak ones were.
Yeah.
And where I've got pictures where the little tip of the car, normally the front, is missing, hugely frustrating. And it occurred to me one day, I thought, if I take it out of the mount, I wonder if I'll find a bit more. That bit is missing. And lo and behold, on most of them, I did.
Yeah.
So some of the images where there's a bit missing that's frustrated me enormously over the decades, I've actually uncovered the bits that we literally hit.
Stuart Dent, it's been a pleasure chatting to you about Volume 1 of Both Sides of the Barrier. When are we likely to see Volume 2?
Did you say when, Mark?
Yeah.
That's a good question. We haven't really talked about it, myself and the guys at BHP, over and above the fact that it's obviously planned because the B-side has already been mentioned in public. But yeah, hopefully it'll happen, but no date as yet.
Right. But I hope when it does come out to get my hands on a copy and to welcome you back to the Backseat Driver where we can talk about the continuation of your career.
Well, it would be a pleasure to do so, Mark.
But until then, Stuart Dent, it's been a pleasure chatting, and thanks very much for coming on the Backseat Driver radio show.
Thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it.
Rarely beaten on price, never beaten on service. Whether it's cars, bikes or commercials, Hodder Tyres are the best in the business. And when it comes to tyre expertise and advice to supplying the correct tyres for your vehicle's specific requirements, nobody comes close to David Lakin and the Hodder Tyres team. So give them a call on 01200 613 192 or visit the website at hoddertyres.co.uk.